Hey y'all. Thank you so much for being a part of this. I am very excited that we have an opportunity to learn together. And you may say, what do you mean learn together? I am not a videographer. And so putting all these things together is quite a new experience for me. So you'll be learning photography. I'll be learning all of this the way I've pretty much learned everything else, which is to do a lot of research online and a lot of trial and error. I'm going to save you some time where photography is concerned. You're probably already tired of trial and error. If you are wanting to take a course, that means that you are really interested in investing some time into learning it the right way. And I hope to save you a lot of time and frustration by doing this. So the first four lessons, oh, back up. I'm Susan Lloyd, and several of you know me. Some of you don't. You have no clue who I am, but somebody you know knows me. And I've been shooting professionally for 20 years. About 5 years of that, I was not shooting at all, but this is what I love to do. Have loved photography for a very long time. Never dreamed that this would be what I would do as a career, but I'm very thankful that I do this and that photography has taken me so many different places and had so many different experiences along the way. So that's just a tiny bit about my background, but I don't want to spend a lot of time worrying or talking about those things. I want to get right into what we're talking about. I want to keep our lessons at under 30 minutes. That's a goal. We'll see. But we'll start right off the bat talking about your gear. The first four lessons that we're doing are lessons that can apply to any camera. It doesn't matter what camera you own. If you own a phone camera and that's it, if you own a really nice expensive DSLR, if you have gone into mirrorless system, if you are using a camera that's what we call a compact system that you can't change lenses on, but it has a lot of settings you can change. These are the things, all of what we're going to talk about in the first four lessons can apply to any of those cameras. So don't feel as if you have to go out and buy a lot of expensive gear, that you have to order something online in order to keep up. At this point, you do not. And you may not even as we get along. It just depends on what gear you have. So I want to make sure you understand every camera, every lens, every flash, everything that you would ever buy to do any type of photography work has both potential and limitations. Everybody's camera has, you probably haven't explored the potential of your camera. I haven't done that yet. There's so much that the camera bodies I own can do that I haven't used. So there's potential and then there are limitations. There are going to be things that you want to be able to do as you learn more about photography, but you won't be able to because you just don't have the equipment. At that point, you have to make a decision. Am I going to buy more gear or am I not? That's going to be up to you. But right now is not the time to run out and do anything like that. Of course, none of us are running out and buying anything, but please don't feel pressured to do that. The first four lessons, like I said, are going to apply to any camera that you have. So look at your gear and decide now, am I working? Well, you should know. Are you working with an iPhone? Are you working with a brand new camera maybe you got around Christmas time and you haven't figured out how to use it? Are you working with a digital SLR? Maybe you're working with a film camera. I'm not sure, but what you need to do is go ahead and get your manual that goes with that camera and have it on hand. You either have it because it came with the camera when you purchased it, or you can go online and you can find it. Google's great. You can find these things. And most camera manuals are available as a PDF download from the manufacturer. So, try that. See if you can find it, because that may be something that I ask you to refer to more often than not. You need to understand too that every camera is different. Even within the same manufacturer, they're going to have different features. So there is absolutely no way possible I can know your camera like I know my own. I just can't. There's too many of them out there. So that's where you're going to have to know your own camera by having that manual close by that you can use as a resource. So you need that manual. You need to maybe do a little digging. I don't want to, belabor the point of these things and what they all do, but Do a little research online. What is it that a DSLR does? How is it set up? Why is it different from a mirrorless system? That's not required. You don't have to do that, but it will help you understand the potential and the limitations of your own gear. The other thing that you need to be aware of is that the best piece of equipment that you have is your own brain. You're going to learn to outsmart your camera. You're going to be able to tell it what you want it to do rather than putting it on the green square or automatic or whatever, and it telling you what it wants to do. Trust me, you're going to like the images that you create and that you set up and you put together better than most of the ones your camera does. Cameras do great, but you can do better because you're smarter. So let's get started. We're going to talk about light. We're going to talk about direction of light, how to handle it, just some very basic things that you can apply. We're going to do a demonstration with an actual shoot. I will edit those images. That actual video, the editing, you can access after you watch this one. It's not incorporated into this one, but I am going to give you some basics and I am going to give you some homework. So I hope you're ready. You need to go out this weekend after you watch this and shoot and shoot and shoot. So yeah, I hope you're ready for that. I expect it. I expect you to do it. The more you put into it, the more you're going to get out. So let's get started.
Okay, friends, we are going to go through these first few slides fairly quickly. No need to reiterate a lot of the things that I talked about in our introduction. I do want to make it clear, though, this is not about starting a photography business, so it's not designed for that. You're going to learn to take better pictures, and that may mean that you decide, hey, this is pretty cool. I think I would like to learn more about this so that I can possibly in the future start a photography business. But all too often we see people get a grain of knowledge and they go out and they start undercutting the industry, and it's a problem. It's a problem for people who have put in a lot of time and experience to develop their craft, their particular brand of photography, to have someone come in and charge far less than is the industry standard. So just be aware. That is just my kind of little heads up there. But you are definitely going to learn how to take better pictures the more you shoot. So when we get into these technical things here, right on number 6, if you are not shooting with a DSLR or even a film camera or a mirrorless system, these might be a little frustrating for you depending on the camera that you have. Just a heads up on that. So just bear in mind that's around the corner, but it's not what we're going to worry about right now. You will hear me talk in those terms, but I'll try to make it understandable. So let's talk about these different types of cameras. It seems like everybody on the planet has a phone camera. A lot of them have learned to use them very well. There are people who know more about iPhone photography than I do. I'm going to give you a resource for somebody you can go to on YouTube who's done a whole series, and he's great. So I will give you that information. But aside from that, there's a compact digital cameras. These are cameras that are all in one unit. There might be a flash on it. There might be lots of things you can control, but you will not be able to put a different lens on that camera. Film cameras, which kind of what started it all. There are people who love to shoot film. I am not one of them. Just going to be straight up honest with you about that. I paid my dues. I'm very happy to shoot digital. I think it's fascinating what we can do and how quickly we can learn with digital, and it's far less expensive in time and materials. Now, your startup is going to be more expensive, but over the long haul, it's not as expensive. Mirrorless system is something I just switched to, and I'm learning about that as well. Some of you are shooting mirrorless and probably have been for longer than me. I've only been doing this for about 2 weeks on mirrorless, but it's very, very connected to DSLR, which, by the way, stands for digital lens single reflex camera. This is the kind of camera body that you buy the body and you buy the lenses separately and you buy the flash separately. That's based off of some film cameras from the past, which were SLRs. And you know what? I said DLSR. It is DSLR. Typo there. I was like, wow, that doesn't sound right. DSLR. I will try to point out that in the comments on the YouTube because I know people will be slamming me for it. So anyway, no matter what kind of camera you have, you should know how to use it, what its limits are, what its potential is, and the best camera is always the one you have with you. Please do not make the mistake of spending a lot of money on a camera and thinking it's going to make you a better photographer. It is not. There's one thing that's going to do that. That's learning the basics and shooting. Experience cannot be bought. You have to go out and do it. That's just the bottom line. So don't feel that you are going to be better just because you have better equipment. Now, you might get to a point where you are outrunning the potential of your equipment and you want to upgrade. That's a different story altogether. But don't think that just being able to go and buy a very expensive camera or order it online, as we have to do now, is going to make you better. All right, so with the equipment that you have right now, these two shots are very doable. The lighting is simple. The posing is simple. It's, these are taken during a time of day where we don't have a lot of harsh light. Now, if you look in this image, you're going to see a lot of bright, bright, bright light. But what I did with my subjects here was to pull them into the shadow so that the light hitting them is nice and soft without a lot of shadows. And this is the same thing I did here. There's not a lot that I did to alter this from a lighting standpoint, which is why it's something that's very possible. Now, I will tell you iPhone users, you can turn your camera to a horizontal orientation. A lot of people don't do that. They get stuck taking verticals, and that's fine. A vertical works for my beautiful, tall, thin cousin, but it's not maybe going to translate as well into a shot like this. So make sure you turn your camera or your phone from time to time and change that orientation from this vertical to, or what we call portrait, to a landscape or a horizontal orientation. So definitely these are doable. You can do this stuff no matter what you have, whatever camera you have. You can handle images like this. Now, we're moving on though to images that may be difficult or impossible depending on the equipment that you have. Up until probably August of last year, I could not have gotten this shot because I did not have a 300 millimeter lens. They're very cost prohibitive. And until I had a reason to buy one, I wasn't going to buy one just because I didn't need it. I didn't need to spend that money, but being able to shoot from the sidelines gave me the opportunity. And even then, I bought a used lens. But just know that this was taken with a 300 millimeter. I might have even had an extender on there that pushed that focal length even further out. I can't remember, but this type of image right here also might be difficult to obtain for you. I had an off-camera light set up. So this was in the evening as the sun was going down, and we're getting this really pretty light behind her, this ambient light. But what I wanted to do was make sure she stood out, so I had an off-camera flash over here, and that was controlled through a radio trigger that was on my camera. So that might be difficult too, even though there's a way to kind of fake that. We'll get into that later. So this might be a struggle. In fact, yeah, it'll be a struggle. These will not. However, just because I will just reiterate this, just because you might not have the more expensive equipment doesn't mean you can't take very high quality images. So we're looking at basically the simplest photography setup: one camera, one mid-range focal distance lens, which means basically limited to kind of what you can see. It's right there in front of you, your subject is, it's not far off in the distance, or unless you're doing a landscape, you might want something a little more wide angle, but most cameras are already set up like this. I'm sorry, most phones are set up like this. Compact cameras are set up like this, they might have a little bit of a zoom on them. But a 35 millimeter or a 50 millimeter lens would be your mid-range, I'm sorry, your mid-range focal distance length. And then a mid-range aperture, meaning we're setting things up so that we don't have a big round hole. An aperture is basically what is letting light into your camera. It's not going to be wide open that lets a ton of light in, and it's not going to be teeny tiny letting very little light in. It's going to be nice mid-range. We'll talk way more about aperture later. You're going to have a light source. Let's go back. And with the exception of this one that I've already pointed out, y'all, I almost pointed it out with my finger like you could see it. Here, we'll use the mouse instead. With the exception of that image, all of these had the same light source, and that is the sun. So when you go outside, it doesn't matter if it's overcast or it's bright and sunny, the sun is there. Thank God we wake up and we see the sun every day. You are going to use that as your available source for this very first lesson. Whether you're inside or outside, I'm going to give you a demonstration on how to do that. So one light source and your basic knowledge of light, exposure, and composition. So let's talk about light. That's going to be our first element. These two beautiful people have always been so willing to let me learn new techniques, and if I call them or text them, they've been willing to let me do a couple of different things so that I learn rather than trying to learn new things with clients. I'm learning with some people who are beautiful and will volunteer, and so that's how these images came about, and we'll get to Wesley in a minute. But uh, light is coming from my right side, the photographer's right side on both of these images. Pretty clear to see that. We've got lots of light here. We've got shadow here. Same here. Lots of light on this side, shadow here. Shadows help define and give us dimension. If we don't have our shadows, we don't have the same kind of dimension, which is great when you are when we talk about flat lighting. This is great. It's nice not to have dimension sometimes, depending on your subject. Me, older people. All right, so right side, not difficult, right? Left side, also not difficult to see. Here we go. On the left, where we have more light, there is a little bit. Now, this was positioned to his left and slightly behind so that we get this nice kind of rim kicker light back here. There is light coming in from the front. This is in an alleyway. That gives us our fill, but you still see the shadows over here. The majority of the light coming from my left side. All right, and this is beautiful flat lighting. This is my friend Justice, whose gorgeous face can take light from any angle. But this is obviously she's lying down and the light source coming straight at her from above. Now, we are seeing some dimension here because, oh, sorry. We are seeing some dimension because, we've got some shadow on the round, on the edges of her face all the way around, but we still can see that this light is straight at her, not coming necessarily straight from one side or the other. We see some shadowing here. I'm not going to say that flat light never gives us shadow. Obviously, it gives us some shadow, but I wanted you to understand that flat light comes from behind the photographer straight at the subject. And backlight is just the opposite. It's going to come from behind the subject straight towards the photographer. This is tricky, and we will not talk about backlight in this first lesson, mainly because it deserves its own lesson. It is tricky to deal with. If you have ever tried to take a picture of your friends and there's a bright sunny lake behind them and they're facing you, you probably ended up with them in shadow and you were very frustrated by that. That's a silhouette. Silhouettes are great. I love to use them. I love to see them. But if we intend to do a silhouette, that's great. But if we don't, we run into some problems. So we will talk about backlight later. This is another example of backlighting where we are the source of the main source is the sun behind her, and then I used an off-camera light to fill in these shadows. If not, I would have lost Katie, or I would have what we call blown out the entire back background would have been lost in order to get her to show up and see her features. So we'll talk about backlight, I promise, but that's not today. So let's kind of review that, because your homework is going to be to do two things. You're going to just look at images online. Just look and see if you can tell where the light source is coming from. That shouldn't be hard. Just look. Look for the shadows, look for the main parts of the light, and you'll be able to see it. So this is from photographer's right side, photographer's left side, flat light, straight at your subject, and backlight straight at the camera. All right, so that's part one of your homework. I'll tell you part two in a little bit, but what I want you to do next, or what we're going to do next, is you're going to see a demonstration of light and how I shot a couple of images using the direction of the light.
Okay, so we're gonna do our first light demonstration, and this is not gonna be necessarily the finished product or anything that you would normally shoot, even though I'm gonna show you how to take these images to another level. This is mainly to show you direction of light, and the reason I'm using a window is because everybody should have a window they can use. I mean, we're all inside right now, right? So we're gonna use the window light. We're gonna have my daughter Caroline sit here while I take a few shots of her, and I'm going to ask her to move position a few times so that I can kind of narrate what's going on. Later in the lesson, I will show you some of these images and let you see how they came out. So let's get started with that. Okay, so this is Caroline, my daughter. You will see her quite a few times because she doesn't have any choice in the matter. Home from Clemson on social, what are we doing? Social distancing, that's it. So she's gonna be my model for right now, and to give you an idea of where I'm starting with my camera, I am at 70 millimeter on the focal length. We'll talk about what that means. I've actually put this on program mode, so nothing is going to change. The camera's going to make all the decisions for me, and all we're going to do is let her change position so that you can see what the light looks like on her face as she moves. So Caroline, from here, all I really want you to do is exactly what you're doing, but looking right here. You can smile if you want to, you don't have to look. All right, and this is, as you can see that light coming in from the side, that's going to be a really good example of side light. Caroline, if you turn your head just a little bit toward your left, there we go. And that's even more, we can see that demonstration of side light even more. Now, I want you to turn your face so it's almost lined up with the edge of the window. There you go, that's perfect. Chin down just a tiny bit. All right, and now when we put her here, we're seeing the light on her face, almost full face, but she's got her face turned. So that's not going to give us an opportunity to shoot her straight on. We will show you how to do that though. I really wanted you to see that light. Now, if we look at this also, it is coming in from the left, not her left, the photographer's left. So that is light from the left side. And when we did split light earlier, that was also from the left side, but definitely split light. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Caroline. Okay. We're on our outdoor setup. I had actually planned to do 2 of these, but it's very flat, very soft, diffuse light out here. There's not a lot of direction to it. So we will save our open shade lighting for another time. But right now, what I want to do is show you how diffuse this light is, how soft it is, and basically you could shoot just about anywhere on a day like this. It is technically golden hour, but we don't have much light coming in from a direction or that really pretty gold light that we get right before sunset. So it's okay. This still gives us a good opportunity to show some really flat, diffuse lighting. This is what it would be like if you were shooting on an overcast day. So let's hit a couple of these and then we'll be done. Okay, Caroline, that's perfect. Good. What you're going to be able to see from these, once again, is how even that light is. Good. And if you will turn toward the Oh my goodness. The right. Turn toward the right. Bring your chin down just a tiny bit. Great. Good. And bring that left foot towards me. Turn your shoulder towards me just a little bit too. Good. Nice. All right. And if you will turn the other way. Yay. Because we really want to see how this light doesn't really change too terribly much. Great. And looking in that same direction that you've turned your body. Good. All right. Wonderful. Okay, guys. So let's talk about these and go from there.
Okay, so we're going to discuss these images that we just, well, I took them a few days ago. It's been a little crazy this week, but I'm going to discuss those images. There is a video following this one on the YouTube channel that shows how I edited these images. So I don't want you to think they came straight out of camera like this. They did not. But in the video, you'll see that I did very little to change them, and I did that on purpose. But let's start with this very first one. And here we go with Caroline sitting with the window light coming in on my left. So you can kind of look at this and see the direction of light is very obvious because we have a lot of shadow. Oh, sorry. A lot of shadow over here, a lot of light here on her face, and we see that fall off there. And then if we move to the outdoor shoot, light is diffuse and flat and coming straight at her. And she's looking in the same direction that she looked before on our previous slide or our previous image, but because of the direction of light, you see she's still got so much light back here, whereas in this image, very different. Lots of shadows back here. Okay, and then I wanted to show you there are two more images from that same setup where you can see again very flat light. Now there is a little bit of brightness on this side. If we were to actually measure it with a light meter, we would see there is a difference in that light value, but I wanted you to note that it's not a huge amount of difference. I also wanted you to pay attention. There is light from the top, obviously, because she's outside. Whereas when we go back to our first image, very little. Now we are getting a little bit on the top, but that's still coming from that window light. We had no lights on inside the room. All right, so lots of light from the top, all around her is kind of bouncing around. And when we say diffuse, we mean it's very soft. Not a lot of shadows. Even the shadows that we see are very soft. They're not harsh. And we see even when she turns to the other side, we are not seeing a huge amount of drop off. Now there again, we see some more brightness along this side. There is a reason for that. This is more open over here. On this side of our yard, we don't have a lot of trees. We don't have a lot going on, but over here, there's a little more vegetation. So we see a little bit of that light being blocked off. So let's look at those one more time. I hope you don't get seasick watching these things go back and forth. Ugh. Anyway, here we go with the light from the window coming in on my left side. And there we go with flat, very diffuse. Now we did not do one from the right side. Actually, I did. I just didn't like the way they turned out and the video was all wonky, and so we skipped all that. Just know that had I repositioned Caroline in this shot and brought her to the other side of the room with that light coming in, then we would have had those same kind of idea. But the point of this is to let you see direction of light. It doesn't matter which direction it's coming from, just so that it's very clear where that is. All right, and these last two again showing how flat, how diffuse, how almost very even that light is. Now, last part of this is your homework. So I want you to look for photos online. You can even do this when you're watching movies or you're binge watching, and pay attention to the direction of the light. Now, lighting setups for movies are extremely complicated in most situations, but you can still see direction of light if you look for it. You can do the same with any image that you find online. You're going to start to see some patterns. Hopefully, portraits are going to show more dimension most of the time. Sports photography, most of the time is going to be very flat. You're not going to see a ton of dimension. It will just depend on where the lights were coming from. Um, in a lot of situations, we cannot control the light. We can only move our subject and move ourselves. So pay attention to that. If you think that the subject was stationary and could not be moved like a building, or if it was a person and the photographer and the subject could both be moved in order to change the direction of light. Actually, it doesn't change the direction of light at all. It changes where the light falls on the subject. So I'll just be looking at that. Take as many photos as you can with light coming from your left side, from your right side, and flat light coming from behind you or all around you, that very flat, diffuse light. I want you to try this inside and outside. Okay, so that means you're going to have to find a window in order to do this inside. You actually can do flat lighting inside without a window. I'm going to see if you can figure that out on your own. Just think about light sources and think about how to control them and move them. You can do this. Choose a favorite from each lighting scenario and post it on the homework thread. I'll have that homework thread set up and there will be a place for you to find it. If you search for, there's certain threads that will be labeled, and this one will be labeled as homework. You'll be able to find that if you just do a search in that Facebook group. And here's your bonus. Try shooting images with backlight. I want you to post your worst one, the one that you were most frustrated by, and don't worry, we've all been there. Everybody's, we all make mistakes or we all do things that we were awful. And I still, to this day, after shooting for 20 years, do some things I'm like, oh God, you knew better than that, or that didn't turn out the way I wanted. So don't be shy about that. And then our next lesson after this is going to be handling that backlighting. How do you fix that? And also how to use some very simple light modifiers. So y'all hang in there. I got it in my time limit. I'm really proud of myself. So I will look forward to seeing what you post. Don't neglect that. Don't neglect to go out and shoot. Remember, the more you put into this, the more you will get out of it. And I'll see you next time.